the Sisters Minor of Mary Immaculate, founded by Mother Maria Elisabetta Patrizzi, August 14th, 1983. There have been allegations of abuse within the convent walls. Former members of the SMMI allege that they faced physical, emotional abuse, strict rules, food restrictions, and they have likened their experience to that of a cult. These are their stories, in their words. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Cult of SMMI. I'm your host, Scott Mort. A quick note about this week's episode. You're going to hear me talk a little bit more, give my own personal opinion and what have you. This week we're dealing with the after effects of being in the Sisters Minor of Mary Immaculate. And being that I have some experience with trauma, you're going to hear me chime in a little bit more than usual. Secondly, it's that time of the year for Johnstown. A lot of motorcycles, a lot of lawnmowers. So you're going to hear me click my mute on and off several times. I usually just leave it on, but I felt that clicking it off would give a better experience. It is slightly annoying, in my opinion, and I do apologize for that, but I do want to get Patricia and Antoinette's message out there. As always, here's a little bit of legalese. The views and experiences expressed by our podcast guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the podcast network. While we strive to provide a platform for diverse perspectives and engaging conversations, it is important to note that the experiences shared by our guests cannot be independently verified. Listeners should exercise critical thinking and consider these stories as personal anecdotes rather than established facts. There is no way to definitively refute or verify the claims made by our guests. The host and the podcast network are not responsible for any statements made by the guests during the course of the show. Listeners are encouraged to form their own judgments and seek additional information if desired. With all of that out of the way, I present to you Patricia and then Antoinette.
Michael Kovacs and I talked a long length on is how Patrizzi used the Blessed Virgin Mary as a go-to for like she was the Blessed Virgin Mary, you know?
Right.
And she never said it, but she also gave us the notion that whenever she was angry with us, the Blessed Virgin Mary and God was angry with us as well. And I wanted to bring that up because I don't know if other survivors have been suffering this, but for a long time, I really had in the picture of my mind, not, as you normally see a statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary, prayerful, very sweet. Well, I would always see an angry one, and it took me a while to get past that, and so we were given our fourth vow, total consecration to Mary Immaculate. It gave leeway to have blind obedience. And so there was obedience, right, with poverty, chastity, and obedience to the church. But then there was this blind obedience to the Immaculata. You didn't ask, to the Blessed Virgin Mary. You didn't ask any questions. And so I'm learning through the book Abuse in the Religious Life and Path to Healing I'm learning how abusers use that. They'll take spiritual figures, whether it be God Himself or the saints or the Blessed Virgin Mary. And so I wanted to bring that up because I think that's an important thing. The other thing is I just happened to stumble upon it, but it makes a lot of sense. And I've been actually researching other orders that are struggling with this. We had no visitor to visit to check up on the order. And as Franciscans, we are supposed to. It was not in the constitutions, however. The only person that really visited us outside of Sisters Minor Mary Immaculate was Father Elia. And he was very close to Patrizzi. So you could see there was more room for abuse to continue because there was no follow through. What we're finding out, what I'm finding out is working with other people from different orders, they had the same problem.
So it seems like it's almost an oversight problem as well. There's not enough eyes on these sisterhoods and brotherhoods.
Exactly. And it can be prevented if things are put into place before an order is founded or publicly known. These things already need to be put into place, not come as you go type of thing. You need to, and this is the whole thing the Catholic Church teaches us, that we're not our own masters. We are not our own leaders. Jesus is King. He is God is our Father. Mary is our mother. The Church is also our mother. So for them not to see that we need to have visitors is a huge oversight, and I think that pertains to even the clergy abuse crisis.
Do you think that this might be an almost fear of losing followers?
That's okay. So this is what I'm coming into. Okay, so not only did Patrizzi do all this stuff, but it was poaching vocations. So she wasn't really going through, as a superior, as a foundress, the discernment process for a vocation coming into Sisters Minor of Mary Immaculate. She was actually poaching vocations from other orders. And to me, I find that appalling because once you are set, and then you have someone come in and try to wiggle their way in and then take you away, to a different charism, to a different, religious order. I think that's underhanded. I think it's deceptive. I don't see God in that.
To me, it's always fallen under, okay, this is one big umbrella. This is a nun, this is a monk, this is a priest, and all the nuns are X. I never really thought of it as somebody going in and poaching people. I've never really seen that subdivision of these are the sisters of Mary Immaculate and these are the sisters of St. Augustine and what have you. I've never really thought of it as a competition. And granted, my experience with the Catholic Church is minimal. My sister is Catholic, but I don't really speak to my sister, and so my experience with Catholicism really is talking to a friend of mine who used to be a priest and used to be an instructor about demonology, and visiting the tomb of Prince Gallitzin, who's up for sainthood here soon. I've never really thought of it as we want this person, go offer them something that they want, poach them from this other monastery.
it's just like, a big corporation who's poaching people from another corporation because they have better skills than what they have. So they're going to try to offer them a deal. And I think God doesn't work that way, you know. Um, and I think Patrizia brought in her own worldly skills, as she was a great person to, as she was good, being charismatic, but she used it in a bad way. So she would gather people, and this is what's, like psychopaths, serial killers also had in common. They were very charismatic. They knew how to grab their victims. They knew how to grab the people they wanted. They targeted individuals. And I just wanted to point that out, that there is not enough screening process. There is not enough accountability or responsibility still to totally eliminate this. It's going still on. And just on my Facebook, I'm reading about all these other people from different orders and what they suffered, and and it's just like, oh my goodness, this is huge. So I wanted to bring that up, that there was no visitor, and the poaching was like, it was just unbelievable, And it's like, a vocation is a vocation. It's like saying taking your job away because they want you for something else, and then once you get there, they put you in something different, and this is what happened, with Sister Carolyn, because she was, and with another sister as well, who was looking into, who was involved in another order, but decided to join the Sisters Minor Mary Immaculate because Patrizia was poaching, and Kovacs, Teresa Kovacs, was poaching, and so I think that from the very beginning, there was a lot of deceptiveness, there was a lot of corruption that the Catholic Church blindly did not bother to check into, And I think that it's really important now, and I emphasize it, that they need to do this for anybody. I don't care if you think they're a saint or not. You need to check them out, You need to check out the order. You need to check out who's in charge, their process, their formation. So that was the other thing is that I've been hearing still Teresa Kovacs might still be involved in other things, like wise. And a friend went the other day to mass. This was a long time ago, of course, and then I was told that she was actually a lector or Eucharistic minister, and and this has happened. The church needs to be aware that the survivors that still survive in the Catholic Church, that choose to still remain Catholic, if you're going to put their abuser on a pedestal or front and center on the altar, or you're going to put him as a lector or Eucharistic minister, that person's going to leave the church. That person is just going to say, I'm done, and I felt that way too. But then I'm just like, okay, God, this is not you, this is them. But for somebody who's constantly has to go to Sunday Mass and see their abuser is not a good thing at all. And I think the Catholic Church has to be careful in protecting and safeguarding survivors and victims of this type of abuse, because they will not flourish. So the last thing I wanted to bring up is I'm starting, it's a book And I advise anybody who's a survivor of abuse, or anybody who is in religious life, or anybody who's especially a formator, to read this book. It should be taught in seminaries. All priests should be reading it. Bishops, everybody should be reading this, because it has opened my eyes to the deception of clergyism. It has opened my eyes to the deception of blind obedience, what is true obedience and what is not. But it's also has given me validation that, one, I'm not crazy, and two, that there are so many ways that we all can be fooled, and I think that we need to, and so this is me taking a step back and going through this and trying to share it with other people. And as a result, I'm doing not a podcast, but I'm doing kind of like a blog on Facebook. I just go through a part of it, and then if it has pertained to me, I kind of share my experience, and then I share how I've healed from it. But I'm asking other people to comment on their own experiences as well, and how they have healed from it, because there really isn't much out there to how do you heal from this type of abuse. How do you move forward? How do you survive in a church that still needs a lot of work on transparency? So that book has been really helpful, as I'm looking into many others as well too. But this was the starting for me, is now things are making sense, and now I understand why they did this. Either for control or for some type of breaking down the person. And I don't like it when people say, "Oh, well, that's how religious life was." I says, no. I says, first of all, there are many saints who were superiors who did not do this. Like St. Clare of Assisi did not do this, St. Teresa of Avila was not abusive to her sisters, These are very, St. Teresa of Lisieux, Little Flower, she was a novice mistress. And, I think when superiors get all this control in their head, and they're really supposed to be in service of their sisters, or the monks or friars in service of their brothers, not over them, not telling them what to do and stuff. It's supposed to serve them, and I think that the church really needs to look at that too as well. When a new order is founded, they really need to check if these things are really happening or not. I hate to say, you cannot do the benefit of the doubt anymore.
For those of our listeners who are not on YouTube, could you give the title and author of that book, please?
Yeah, so it's Abuse in the Religious Life in the Path to Healing. It's by Dom Disma de Lassus, and I'll spell the last name, DE space LASSUS.
Excellent. And you said you were posting things on Facebook, opening it up, kind of doing a blog. How would our listeners find you there?
So they can go to Abuse Testimony. That's where I have it. They could probably find it also on my other page, Teresa Fastina, because I share it across all my pages. And some, I usually do one a week, just because it's I have a busy life. I can't do it I can't do one a day or anything like that. But I do one a week, and I don't put a lot. I just focus on one particular thing per post, and then I just try to break it down a little bit and then again explain my sharing my experience if I have it, and offer, asking others if they want to comment on their experiences, to share their experiences, or what they would like to post or say or anything, because it's really open for everybody. It's not for myself, it's for everybody, and I really want people to realize that what the author talks about that happens in this book, this is not God, this is not his will, this is not his plan, and that you're burned or duped, whatever you want to call it, you're fooled, but you can arise above that. And sometimes knowing what to identify what your abuse was, or to identify what you suffered, is the first step towards healing.
Beautiful, beautiful. I have to ask, does the message seem to be getting out there? Are more people finding out about the SMMI?
Actually, there's a family that is looking to extract a member from Patrici's group that's still in Italy. So that's a huge thing. We don't know how that's going to go, but praying that everything goes fine.
Do you know how many members are left within the SMMI now? I know it's a shadow of its former self.
Yeah, it's definitely a shadow. So I would say maybe 4 to 6 women, I think, between the United States with Teresa Kovacs. And I'm not sure if she's affiliated with the one in Italy, but the one in Italy, I know there was at least 4 sisters, because 2 were serving at the shrine and 2 were for the bishop that was overseeing their group. And for the brothers, though, there's a lot more, I think. There's maybe 5 or 6. And families have asked me more about the brothers than the sisters. So there's been a recent, increase in males entering that group. So I just wanted to say that, that there's still that movement going on. It is under a bishop. I'm not sure if it's ecclesiastically accepted by the Catholic Church or not, because we've been duped before, so I don't even know what's truth. I just feel like, well, I don't know. It has to be investigated. And it's very hard to, because when you're, I'm not Italian, and I'd have to go down to Italy and really sit down and talk to the bishops and whoever's in charge, and really see if this is really truly, accepted by the Catholic Church or not. But they do follow the charism of Patrizi, particular, following St. Maximilian Kolbe. The charism itself is not a bad thing, I do want to say, but following a foundress and what she stood for and what she has done, I don't think is healthy for anybody. And she has written many books against the obedience of the Catholic Church. She has done many against the Catholic, against the obedience of the Catholic Church. So I really don't know how authentic her group is. Now she's deceased. This bishop seems to oversee it. I don't know. But it seems like he has them there to take care of the shrine and basically to help them, in the diocese, in his office. So it seems, on that's as much as I know right now. But I do know that 2 people have come forward and are very concerned about two particular members in that group.
I see. So it does seem, I mean, we're not 100% certain, but it does seem that the abuse is continuing.
Well, and this is the thing, the abuse may be like, well, this is what Patrici does, so we're going to follow tradition. So this is why it's important to read this book, because he talks about how superiors will say, well, this is the tradition of the order, and this is like hazing could be a tradition or whatever. or bullying is a form of tradition. But when you really see, it's a manipulation control factor, and breaking the person down. And I've taken so many psychology classes, theology classes, and I still don't get how people can take pleasure in this type of stuff, hurting other people like this. I it's beyond my scope of reasoning, beyond my scope, my mind. I just think it's just pure evil, and so it's really important to like read a book like this, or to read this book, because you can really understand what really is going on in these so-called religious orders that turn out to be cults that have no representation of Jesus, no representation of the Blessed Mother. They just say, in the name of Jesus, in the name of the Blessed Mother. And that's how our order was. The Sisters Minor of Mary Immaculate really put up a cosmetic type of look, but very, on the inside, it was very, I would say, demonically influenced by just the way the foundress acted, but superiors acted, the corruption, the abuse, the cover-ups of the priests, abuse, clergy abuse, corruption, to some of the highest levels. And I just have to say, like, wow, how stupid was that? But it's not because we were stupid. It's just because they were very, very clever, And so I don't know about this group. I really don't. I still don't have a good feeling about it. I don't think I ever will, just because too subjective to it. But I would like to have the Catholic Church investigate it. I have contacted that bishop, and he said that it's under his jurisdiction, under his authority. So that is much as I can get from about that group.
That is fascinating. So he's basically saying, please correct me if I'm wrong. He's basically saying, I'm aware of the past allegations. I am in charge.
Yep.
And whether or not this is going to be investigated is solely left in my hands.
Exactly. Well, he didn't say anything about investigation. This is what he said, because he spoke Italian, so I was trying to understand the Italian, and it was, email correspondence. And he basically said, or text correspondence, I don't know, but it was a correspondence with writing. So he basically said, I'm aware of the accusations. Patrizia is now deceased. Before she died, she handed it over to me, and now they are under my authority. End of discussion.
I see.
So it's like a gray area, because when you're talking about, authority of bishops and stuff, it's like, okay, well, this was a papal. Our community was under the Holy Father. Okay, but then Patrizia found all these other things that weren't they didn't have enough people to be under the Holy Father. You have to have a certain amount to be a pontifical order. We had so many people that we were able to be pontifical. But they're under probably diocesan rights, if anything, or public association. But it's like I said, it's a shadow of what we used to be. The shadow is growing. So I would like to somehow see that, okay, are they healthy? Are they okay? But then again, the distance between the United States and Italy, and not just geographically, but politically and legalistically, it would be really, really hard. I mean, I have my husband's niece is an international lawyer, and she just said that would be a lot of red tape. And the Catholic Church have their lawyers, So, and I do believe that in some way they're set up for if anybody should ever try to, question them or anything like that. Because Patricia was very sure to have backup, to defend her.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to touch on today?
I think that was it. I just want people to be aware, first of all, like if anybody has ever said that God or Blessed Mother or Saint was angry with you or something because you did something, that is totally false. And that's a way of spiritual abuse. And not to believe that, and definitely, and to pray on it and try to see the total opposite of it, because it can be damaging to one's soul, it can be to their whole person, What Patrizzi did, what Kovacs has done recently is the killing of the soul, the murder of the soul. And this book talks about the complete murder of the soul. And when the soul is dead, the mind, the body, it's just it's like a zombie, If you don't have your soul, then how are you supposed to do anything? And this is what they did. They wanted us to be I think like zombies, like no soul, no heart, no mind. We had no opinion. We just had to be like little robots, And so if you find an order doing this, that's a big red flag. Absolutely not. God is love, and he wants us to love others. So anything that is out of that context is not a good religious order.
Patricia, could we have the title of that book one more time?
Okay, so it's called Abuses in the Religious Life in the Path to Healing by Dom Dismas de Lassus, and I'll spell the last name DE space LASSUS. I think he's French,
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think I'm almost thinking it is this by a priest. So, yeah, it found it in his own order as well on these abuses, and so he wanted to write about it and what he went through. And so,
how can people reach you on Facebook?
They can go to Abuse Testimony. They can go to my page, Therese Fastina. I have blue ribbon apostolate, if people are asking for blue ribbons, or if they just want to talk about their experience, whatever. So there's 3 different locations they can reach me.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Patricia. Bless you.
You're welcome. You take care.
You too. So how are you doing, Antoinette?
I'm okay. It's been a journey listening to everybody that you've interviewed.
It's been a journey for me as well. Yeah, this is I'm not gonna lie, this has done a lot to my soul. Not all of it good, but I'm glad. Yeah. I'm very glad to be able to give everyone a voice.
Yeah, it's hard, through the years, I've been, I don't say it to everyone. It became a joke for a while, that, because I live in Texas and, I had gone through the military and, had children and, lived a whole different life. It became a joke for a while in my friend group about me having been a nun, they were like, it surprises people when they find out. And uh, I stopped telling people because it became such a joke in my friend group. And I was just like, this stuff is not funny.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of course it's not something, it's not dinner time conversation. It's not like, oh, well, let me tell you what happened. It's not, most people don't know. Most people know that I spent some time there, and they know not to pressure me about religious things. Um, but they don't know the story. Well, they do now because they all saw I was on a podcast.
I
So
see.
a
I
lot of them
see.
listened and were like, "Oh my!" But before that, it's not a story. It's not fodder for dinner parties.
Right, right. You have the idea of somebody. If somebody comes up to me and goes, "I was a nun," before this podcast was a thing, my thought was, oh, a lot of praying, helping the poor, vow of poverty, but taken care of. And now it's like, oh, I don't know how to feel about it.
Well, I think that's probably how it should be, and unfortunately for us, we got roped in by people that weren't doing, what they were supposed to.
Right.
And
Right.
and I don't know. I've thought about it a lot, and I sat there and I've gone over it with my therapist and all of that stuff because I started seeing my therapist more often, basically because of one of the comments on my podcast on your channel. One of the comments said, as something to the effect of, as she goes through everything that happened to her, she might as well be reading a shopping list, because I don't show a lot of emotion. I'm not an emotional person.
Right.
And some of that is the psychological effects of things like this. Now, like I said, this wasn't the first bad thing that happened to me, and it certainly wasn't the last either, but it did, because I was so young, it did things not so good to my formative, because I was 16, remember, when this started, and when I entered, and that's formative years. That's years when you're getting to know yourself and trying to figure out what you want to do with life, and so and of course you're not fully emotionally developed, and so some of the things that happened, affected me. You know, um, I know I'm scared to death of not of waste and stuff because of food. Now, remember, I was locked in a room for almost 2 weeks. With the only bits of food was whatever this the one sister snuck up to me and shoved under the door. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to think about what was the intention there. Because I was there for 2 weeks. So my thing was, people die within 8 days without food. So did she mean to kill me? You know what I mean? I'll never know. I don't think I'll ever ask her. You know what I mean? Because I'm not about to go seek her out. But stuff like that, is things that I think about at night. You know, um, so I hesitate a lot in the giving of interviews. There's been like two other interviews, one with the HuffPost, and there was another podcast that people have done that I decided not to do because I myself have not come out of this unscathed. I think unscathed is the wrong word, but I haven't come out of this with my halo intact. I know one lady that was giving an interview. She said something about the amazing thing I find about all y'all is that um, your faith is still strong, and I'm like, but it's not. You know what I mean? Like, because for me personally, I left the church. You know, when I left the convent, I left the church. I left. I just, when I was walking, running, down the streets trying to get to the bridge, I left everything behind in my mind, and and that was, I will go out of my way to not drive past the Catholic church in town. I won't even drive past it. Um, and Catholic imagery, it triggers me, like I can't look at pictures of the Sacred Heart or pictures of the Virgin Mother. I can't do it. Cannot do it. Um, I have a rosary that was willed to me from my grandpa when he died, and it sits in the back of my drawer, my dresser drawer, because I can't hold it. You know what I mean? Because I just I've put those feelings away, and I guess I don't want to feel them. And I know my therapist is working on them because she thinks that since I put the pain away, in my little box in my brain, I also can't feel extreme joy. So I do tend to shopping list things as as your fan wrote, because I go into, I call it robot mode. My therapist calls it, being distanced, and there's a word for it, disassociation. She calls it disassociation. I call it robot mode. I'm very much a person even now, and it made me really good for the military, you know what I mean, but not so good for real life. um it's like, okay, that's done, let's move on, you know what I mean.
I
um
I know very well what you mean. I've
yeah.
uh, there are people out there who have not gone through a lot of trauma in their life, and this whole thing of everybody's trauma is everybody's trauma, that is true to an extent, but some guy who the worst thing that has happened in their lives is a leaky faucet.
Yeah.
It's not the same. It's absolutely not the same. And
Yeah.
everybody finds their coping mechanism. Mine is humor. Believe it,
Yeah.
I'm very stoic on this podcast, but if you would ask my wife, I have just have a really, really unusual and raunchy sense of humor. And I think a lot of people, a lot of people would be surprised to hear some of the stuff that comes out of my mouth. And there's a few listeners out there who are personal friends that they will tell you some of the stuff that comes out of my mouth is pretty bad. That's exactly how I deal with stuff. I will make jokes about my mother's death. I will make jokes about cancer. I will make jokes about horrible accidents I've had. Because if my attitude is, if I can laugh at it, it can't kill me.
Right.
And everybody has their coping mechanism. Some people detach emotionally from it. I think everybody who's gone through trauma will detach somewhat from it. But then no matter what, you can only pull away so far from it. It is part of you. And
It is.
be it humor, be it list making, be it some sort of action. Everybody has that way of, yeah, it's there. I see it. This is how I deal with it. So if,
Yeah.
list making, if that's what you have to do to get through the day, me joking about it, if that's what I have to do to get through the day, so be it. I need to survive.
Yeah.
You need to survive. We all do.
Yeah. And I jumped right from the convent into, well, there was like a year wait. I went from the convent to the military, and then I purposely made it so that they would send me far, far away, and they did, but it was, the military is the perfect place to become, very detached from anything emotional, you know. Um, And I do, I do. My kids will tell you, I'm very much like, I don't understand why we have to sit there and cry about this. Let's go. You know, and it's just kind of how I do. Like, even when I did your podcast, I was like, okay, well, I got that done. And so what's next? And I just moved back. And then I went back to read the comments and I was just like, whoa, hold on. This person's right. Like, I don't really feel, you know what I mean? And like my therapist said, because I put away the bad stuff, like if you don't feel sadness, you don't feel joy either, right? Um, so that's something that I'm working on. But I do know that Catholic imagery, it, it triggers me. There's one, I have a very distant cousin that has joined an order, and it's a good order. It's not like the one that we were in. Um, and I follow them on Facebook, and that's about the only imagery I can go through. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just on Facebook. I don't go visit her. That's it. I follow them on Facebook to see her pictures sometimes, and that's it. Um, but I don't go to church. And I live in Texas. I live in West Texas, and we call this the buckle of the Bible Belt, right? These people will come and knock on your door to talk about religion. And um, I think my strong emotion there is just anger. Like, I'm like, please stop shoving it down. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, no, please stop. I've put up signs and stuff, and still they knock, and I get very angry with the knockers. But I don't want to talk to people about religion at all because of what happened, you know. And I do have to think about it. A lot of times I think about why, that those are my questions, the why, you know. I don't think that I would ever ask them why, because I don't think that they would be truthful, you know, with the why,
Do
you know.
you think they would even know the why?
I don't
It,
know. That's the thing, for years, I kept this bottled for years before I ran into Mike on Fat Mass, because I ran into Mike on Fat Mass. And one of the things that I do at night when I don't sleep is I ponder the whys of life, you know. And you know, like I said in the beginning, I have to wonder, did she mean to kill me? You know what I mean? Because she didn't come check on me for 2 weeks. You know what I mean? So it was like, uh, I could have very easily died. There was a sink in our rooms, so I had access to water, but I didn't have access to food, and she didn't know, or I'm assuming she didn't know, that the other sister was sneaking food under the door to me, you know. So I don't know if she meant to kill me or not. And then as I listened to, because I listened to the other podcasts, you know, um, because for years, one of the things that I thought was that I somehow didn't remember things right, or didn't, maybe my mind was exaggerating them because I was so young. Like, I, throughout the years, until I met Mike, I always thought I was the one in the wrong. So I went through years and years of thinking that I was horrible. I was going to go to hell. I was going to, because I left, you know. And my mother kept in contact with Sister Teresa. I know that Mike asked me one time, I don't know how my sister lives. I said, because people like my mother are sending her money. That's how she lives, you know, because Sister Teresa and my mother have kept in contact. And I no longer talk to my mom. I haven't talked to my mom since I was in the military, because they didn't want me to join the military, and that was a big blow to them, and they stopped talking to me. But up until then, my mom and Sister Teresa talked, and I know my mom sent her money a couple of times, and I don't know if they've continued up till now, but I mean, I'm assuming that they probably have because they had this bond, you know. Um, remember, my mom was pretty abusive herself, so so um, it doesn't surprise me that she's able to get people to finance her way of life, you know. Um, so I don't know if she would tell me the why or if she would just make up some story. Or if there was some story in her head. I don't know if she lives in a fantasy world. She possibly could live in a fantasy world where she thinks that she is some sort of saint that's just put upon, and all of this is a big trial for her place in heaven. Because I remember anytime anything bad would happen, it was always give it to God, give it to God, give it to God. Which it makes sense to a certain extent, but humans, are supposed to make their lives better. You're not supposed to just sit here and accept everything bad and be like, okay, well, this just is God's plan for me to, I don't know, whatever. Like the sisters, it really, like, I remember sitting here listening to the sisters talking about, well, she thinks that she should have died. Like she thinks that they thought she should have died. And that's, it makes sense to me because, like I said, she may have thought, well, I'm just going to keep this woman in this, or this girl, because I was just a child at the time, in this room, and I'm going to open it up and she just won't be a problem anymore. Like, I don't know if that's what she was thinking. I don't know. One of the strongest emotions I have, and it took me a while to figure out how to temper it in the citizen world, because it's fine in the military. I was a really good commander in the military, because I had no patience for nonsense. You know what I mean? I
Mm-hmm.
was, I had no patience for that kind of thinking, and I guess it's because of what I went through. Because and remember, even before I got locked in the room, okay, um, even before I got locked in the room, I was sick a lot, um, with stomach sickness. And I thought it was because, I had never had, my father was a hunter and we had a lot of fresh meat and stuff growing up because he hunted. So we ate a lot of game. I had never had things like hot dogs, you know what I mean? And stuff. So I thought maybe it was an allergic reaction to the hot dogs. And now that I think about it, you know, uh, it's probably because the food was bad. Because now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of the food that we had was that it was donated to us, but we weren't allowed to throw out anything. You know what I mean? So we ate things even if it was out of date. So I'm wondering if some of the food affected me because it was out of date or, bad. you know, Not that people gave us bad food, but when you donate things, when people come for donations, do you donate your favorite stuff? Most people don't. Most people are going to donate the can of beans that's been sitting in the back of the, thing for years, or, so, um, remember I had said we never had fresh food. We never went to the grocery store. Sister Teresa never went to the grocery store. Like we never had fresh groceries. And I don't mean fresh food like fresh fruits and vegetables. We never even had like a box of cereal that was bought. Like everything that we had was given to us by the parishioners. And if they didn't give us anything, then we didn't have anything. And we were lucky, like I said. I think that was kind of a thing throughout the order, because I know that we were considered lucky because we were attached to a school, and the school gave us one meal a day from whatever the kids were having for lunch. We had a plate too. Um, so we were considered lucky by the other sisters to have that resource. So I mean, that's something I don't think it's, it doesn't sound horrible, when you say it, but it's something that's affected me because being in a room for 2 weeks with no food except for what was shoved under the door, like scraps from, that the other sister could save from her meal, I'm assuming. I haven't gotten to talk to her again, so I don't know, what it was that she was, you know, stealing and sending under the door. But it wasn't a lot of food, but it was enough to keep me alive. And um, to this day, I have a hard time with throwing out food. Like I will sit here and gorge myself on the day that the stuff goes out of date. It's horrible. You know what I mean? And people are like, Anna, just throw it out. And I'm like, I can't. you know. Um, I gave myself food poisoning twice by drinking coffee creamer that was out of date because I can't, like, it's like something in me doesn't throw it out. But I'm getting better at stuff like that. But it's been a journey, you know, um, because you have to remember I was doing this in my formative years. You know, there's a lot of things that I'm doing. If somebody questions me, if I think back, you know, I'm doing it because I was taught to do this when I was in the convent. You know, um, I I wash tinfoil and keep it. You know what I mean? Until I don't do. If I cover something in tinfoil and I'm done with it, I'll wash the tinfoil and keep the tinfoil. And people are like, "Why do you do that?" And I'm like, "That's something we did in the convent." You know what I mean? So it's just interesting, some of the things, and some of the stuff is harmless like that, and other things like eating bad food, just so that it doesn't go to waste and stuff is things that I've carried with me, and then also a sense of the disassociation. I don't know how to say that. I think the comment, and I'm not saying that the person that commented isn't bad or anything, but it stopped me in my tracks. When somebody said she may as well be reading a grocery list, it stopped me in my tracks, and I was just like, "Whoa, hold on," that's something isn't right here. And so I started looking at that, and um, just as everything, and I've continued also listening to the podcast of the other sisters, and it's just been interesting um, to me to realize that I'm just there's something in my emotional growth that was stunted, I think, if that makes any sense.
It does. It does. And I mean, I don't think any of the sisters got out of it, unscathed and unscarred.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, you guys all seem to be carrying, and I hope nobody takes offense to this because, I'm pointing fingers back at myself too. You guys seem to be carrying a lot of scars that can't be seen right now. And I mean, it's it's not about the scars. It's about how you deal with them. We've all
Yeah.
got the scars we carry, myself included. My wife, you, and probably billions of other people out there who have had it
Yeah.
worse and better than us.
Right.
It is tough. It is tough. On the therapy side of things, what kinds of therapy are you going to? Are you doing talk therapy?
Well,
Are you doing EMDR? Anything like that?
well, good thing you brought that. 'Cause I have been doing talk therapy up to now, because I will say, as I was listening to the podcast, what came forward, of the other sisters, because I think mine came out for, like, there was Mike, and then there was me, and then there was the other two sisters. And as I was listening to the other two sisters, some things that were repressed came up, like things I hadn't thought about. I don't know if they were clinically repressed, but they were just things. And then I would just remember, or they would say, there was like, I think Georgiana said a name one time, and I was like, oh my gosh. like just the mention of that one person's name, everything kept like it was like, and I texted Mike and I'm like, Mike, where is that sister? Like, do we know where that sister is? And it turns out we don't really know where she is, but um, it was, you know, stuff like that, so we've been talking through that. I think she has mentioned EMDR therapy. My therapist is EMDR certified, so she wants to eventually go through that. But she wants to make sure as we go through it, because this is what I told her. I was like, look, I can't spend the rest of my life, being emotionally tied up with this. You know what I mean? I have to walk through this. If I have to walk through this again, I have to walk through it, and that has to be it. Like, and I don't mean like I forget about it, but I mean, if we are going to like rip the scabs off of old wounds, so to speak, it has to be the last time, because I can't, I'm 51 now, you know what I mean? I'm starting to, in 12 years, I'm hoping to retire. You know what I mean? I cannot go through the second part of my life being as emotionally scarred as the first half of my life. I can't do it. You know what I mean? So my mechanism up to this point has been just to file everything away. And the repercussions of that was an extreme amount of disassociation. And I recognize that I have an extreme amount of disassociation. I can be, it's good and it's bad. You know, it's good because I've been able to do things in the corporate world and I've been able to do things in the military that would curdle some people's blood. You know what I mean? Like they just wouldn't have the stomach for it. And I've just been like, whatever, I'll do it. You know what I mean? Because I don't get affected, because I do have that amount of disassociation, Um, but the bad in that is like what my therapist said. I don't feel extreme sadness, but I don't feel extreme joy either, ever. You know, I'm kind of I call it robot mode. I kind of live my life in robot mode. It's like, okay, next, this is done. You know what I mean? What's the next thing? And that's what I do. Like I could feel things. I could tell you I love my kids. You know what I mean? I could tell you I was hurt when my ex-husband cheated on me. Like I could tell you all these things, but I don't feel it to the depth that normal people do, I guess. And so she wants to go through the EMDR therapy to open up those sensations of feelings again, I guess, for lack of a better explanation. So we are exploring that. But she wanted to make sure that I didn't have anything else repressed, so that we weren't having to walk through it again and again and again and again. So, because from what I understand with the EMDR therapy, you literally walk through it again, but with techniques that help you compartmentalize in a healthier way than I've already compartmentalized. That is how it's been explained to me. Yeah.
As someone who's gone through EMDR, the first time I went through it, I went, what is this hokum? What is this absolute bullshit? That I'm going to be honest. Because, I mean, it's some guy clicking castanets in my ears and having me follow his fingers with my eyes without moving my
patterns
head.
Or something.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there, and my therapist, Dr. Frank Colosimo, amazing man, and he's there. Just try to keep the incident that hurt you in your head. And he's never asked me what happened to me, and right. He's never asked me what I think about. Just keep it in your head. And some way through that eye movement, through the clicking, it stops becoming a defining event and starts to become just something that happened to me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't remove the emotion from it, but it's like it removes the trauma from it.
Right.
So I cannot look, that's my experience with it. I'm not going to say that everyone's going to have the same experience with it.
Yeah.
But I strongly suggest anyone, EMDR
At
did
least
turn
try.
around my life.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's also, we have to go through, as far as my personal therapy, it doesn't start and end with what happened in the convent. You know, it starts with childhood, like, and goes all the way through, my youngest kid trying to commit suicide last year. There's a lot of trauma in my life that really should have affected me. And my defense mechanism is put the emotions away. So keeping that, and that's one thing they told me, keeping the ability to keep concentrating on the event that has hurt you is, that's going to be my challenge. Because I will, even when it comes up in therapy, I will um, change the subject, you know, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. I'll just be like, well, the way I dealt with it is this, and then I'll just move on. And she's just like, hold on, you know. So she's real good at that. I would have to say your podcast is the first time that I've opened myself up to actually talk about things that have happened. And even though I was not in the convent as long as other people, and even though it was a short couple of years in my own life, which is getting longer now, it's it's a big event. You know what I mean? The events that happen there, things that I've witnessed and things that I went through myself, have both, um, because of the period of time it was in, had to both be um, put into my life as period the 2 year the 2.5 years I was there was basically, it defined a lot. It didn't define everything because I was already damaged when I got there. In fact, somebody said to me at one point, when did you realize everything went wrong? And I said there were two periods of time. One was when Sister Teresa started calling me a slut. You know what I mean? Because I never thought those kind of words would come out of a nun's mouth. You know what I mean? Um, so that was one big thing that we had talked about. But the other thing was when I realized that she was talking to my mother almost every day, you know, and that to me almost felt like a bigger betrayal than calling me a slut, because it didn't surprise me that she called me a slut if she was talking to my mom, you know, because remember, they were very aware of the fact that I was joining the convent to get away from my parents. They knew this. They knew this, you know. So the fact that she was talking to my mom almost every single day on the phone, to me, that was an even bigger betrayal, because I was trying to get away from my mom. And then I was just like, well, my mom's just controlling me still, but now she's controlling me through Sister Teresa. And that's when I was just like, I've got to go. I've got to get out of here. And that's when I told Sister Teresa I wanted to go. And that's when I got locked up. So it's been, you know, so there's a lot. The EMDR is going to have to start in my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Like baby, like sometimes we're talking about experiences that happened, when I was still crawling and stuff like that. So
Where do you see your life going from here? Where do you want your life to go from here?
oh my gosh, I've raised 5 children. Okay. 4 of them were mine and one was my husband's, um, my stepdaughter. uh, my youngest daughter is about to turn 18. So I'm about to start the second half of my life. I'm in my 50s. Um, Career wise, I'm starting to plan. Well, I mean, I have a 401k and all that already that's been padded nicely. So financially, I've been planning since I was in the military, but I'm planning to I'm planning my retirement. Like, what do I actually want to do? You know? And I think what I want is just peace for the second half of my life, for to live the rest of my life out in peace. I'm old now. I feel old, you know. Um, I just want to be able to live in peace. I don't want um, I don't want to be woken up in the middle of the night, because there's been times, you know, um, I seriously am freaked out. Like, I told Mike after I gave the podcast interview to you, I was just like, the irrational part of my brain is going to be looking over my shoulder, because I don't know if Sister Teresa is going to come running after me, you know, um, for speaking out. And just like when I ran away that night, I kept looking over my shoulder. You know, I've done that a lot in my life. I can hear her voice, and I can hear Mother Elizabeth's voice every now and again. You know, because remember, I tortured myself for years after leaving, you know, that I had betrayed these people. I thought that I had betrayed these people and I was going to hell for it. I lived the better part of 20 years thinking this, you know. And so, like, I'll hear their voices in the night. Not so much when I'm up and working and going through my motions, you know, of the day, but you know, when I lay in bed at night, or if I'm taking a walk, you know, and it's still or something like that, or there's just really isn't anything going on, I can hear them say my name. I can hear Sister Teresa still yelling at me. Like, I literally get up and look and see if there's somebody in the house. It comes through that clearly. And so I just want peace from that. I don't want to hear them anymore. I want to be able to put it to bed and be done with it. But I also don't want anybody else to ever have to go through anything like this. So even though I've declined to give interviews in other mediums besides you, I think that I'm hoping that that one girl that is looking into religious life hears all of our stories or one of our stories and goes, oh, let me take a closer look at this. Because there are good, like I said, I have a cousin who I follow, who is in a good order, you know. And any order that is legitimate will welcome your questioning. So I'm hoping that somebody comes across this and questions whatever order they're trying to join. Whether it's, I say a girl, but it could be guys too. You know, the men go through it too, you know. So anybody who's considering religious life, and it's not even Catholic religious life. Like, there's Buddhist monasteries that have gone through similar, you know what I mean? So it's like, you know, if you're considering religious life, especially a monastic type of religious life where it's just you and them, you know, um, ask questions, you know, and know what to look for and know those red flag signs, you know, um, because some people wouldn't have been able to get out, you know, and there's some people that didn't get out. Mike has told stories of sisters that got caught up in it and just weren't able to make it out, you know. So um, I'm hoping that my story and the other women's story helps at least one person. And then I'm hoping that for myself to just have peace and not hear these women's voices in my head for the rest of my life, you know. Um, and, you know, because I'll be showering, you know, because that's a time when you're by yourself. And I'll all of a sudden hear Sister Teresa's voice. It'll freak me out. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, you know. Um, so I'm hoping for that to stop, you know. Um, and I just don't, I can't find it in me. Mother Elizabeth is gone. She has died a few years back. And I'm sure that she has met whatever judgment happens, you know. Um, And Sister Teresa's going to have to go through the same thing, you know? And so are some of the other sisters that knew it was wrong but did it anyway. You know what I mean? So, um, because there's other sisters that were in there doing all kinds of sort of things. We just talk mostly about Mother Elizabeth and Sister Teresa because they were kind of like the head of it, you know? So I'm sure Sister Teresa will have to go through some sort of judgment. I do hope that anywhere that she places herself is smart enough to do enough research to not allow her to continue to work with children, because that kind of scares me. you
Mm-hmm.
know it scares me that she's working with, or that she has worked with, schools, because my immediate question when I hear that she's teaching is she teaching or is she recruiting? you know because I was certainly recruited. you know
Mm-hmm.
so that's a worry I do have. um but I feel powerless to stop it. It's up to the Catholic Church to me seems like it's it's the Catholic Church is too big for me to take on. So I have to hope that the authorities that are put in place are smart enough to do the research. You know, and
Is there anything else that you'd want to share with the listeners before we close this?
I don't know. I just stuff like this. It affects you. And I really don't know. Like I said, the sum of your listeners. You know, um, I will say, you know, thank you to whoever made that comment. Because it made me think differently about where I was going with my mental health. I was like going to give the interview and file it away again and move on with life. And then I was just like, hey, hold on, something is not right here. And other people are recognizing that something's not right. I shouldn't be able to talk about, you know, what happened with no emotion. But, so I think to that person, thank you. Um, but just, when you're making choices for yourself or for your kids, you know, research, do your research. Emotions are different. I was very emotional at that point in my life. All I wanted was to get away from my parents. And I thought that I had found an avenue to do so. And um, I ended up in a worse situation. Well, I don't know if it was worse, but a different situation, a difficult situation. So, you know, research and make sure that you know the people and the history of the people that you went into, you know, because I didn't know anything about this order when I went in. All I knew is they wanted me, you know, and they wanted me enough to come back several times to a place, because if you remember, I was working in a bookshop for another order and they recruited me out from under that order. And um, I wish I would have done my research. So, um, just for anybody that's thinking of religious life, just do your research, because any order that's worth their salt, any order that's genuine and actually living a religious life and not really cultish like this one was, um, is going to welcome your questions and is going to answer them. You know, there's nothing in religious life. I can tell you right now, even after talking to other religious people, there's nothing in religious life that's secret. There's nothing they can't talk about. There's no big bad secret. And if there is, then that's your red flag. You know, nothing goes on in convents or monasteries with men or women that is totally secret that they can't talk about. That's just not how it works. So that's my caution.
Antoinette, thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us once again on the Cult of SMMI. If you, a friend, a family member, have had any dealings with the SMMI as members or in passing, if your experience was positive with the SMMI, if they were neutral, if they were negative, we want to hear your tale. You can reach out to us at strangepathwaysmail@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening. Take care of yourselves and each other.